Good morning, everyone. Good to see your names and maybe your face. Welcome to our February coffee. I can't believe it's February and almost the end of February. I'm glad you can join us this morning. So we are going to get started just in just a moment. And we have quite a few questions this morning. So I'll certainly try to answer as many of the questions that we've received so far. And obviously, they fall into two broad areas of the reopening plans and senior activities. And I know that that's top of mind for all of us. So we'll probably spend the majority of our time in those two areas. But there was one question that I wanted to answer and address first, because I think that one doesn't fall into the rest of them. And I think I can answer it fairly quickly, whereas the other questions may take a little bit more time and explanation, quite frankly. And there was a question about the Pledge of Allegiance and is it being reinstated, and where are we with students saying the pledge? We have, because of the modification in our schedule, our homerooms only occur twice a week. And for one of the days, on Fridays, that's where we do now our weekly announcements. They used to be morning announcements. Now they're weekly announcements because we've had to sort of scale back in terms of our ability to do everything that goes into the announcements. And so at the top of every weekly announcement, the Pledge of Allegiance is stated, and we have that moment. I anticipate that when we return to a regular schedule, whenever that will be, then we'll go back to having the Pledge of Allegiance as part of our morning announcements every week. Every day. At this point, we're not able to actually do that just because of the structure of the schedule. But that is certainly something that we will be returning to when we are able to, and our schedule switches just a little bit. So with that, I'm going to say good morning again. Thank you so much for joining me again this morning. Thank you for those of you who were able to either attend or view our PTSA meeting on Tuesday. And as always, my thanks to the PTSA for facilitating and hosting these events with me, and really helping to help us navigate all of the challenges that we're facing with this reopening. So I think we have really a great partnership. So I really appreciate all the support of our PTSA. So we're going to begin this morning. As I said, we have two broad topics, the COVID return to school, and then we have topics grouped under seniors and graduation. And I think we can work through most of the questions today and hopefully have a little bit of time for any others that come up in the chat. But I'm going to start with the questions that were submitted. The first question involves the PE, and what are we doing with PE? And mask wearing in PE classes when students return in person. And I would just like to say that initially for our PE courses, they are going to remain virtual because of some safety and health concerns. The county has asked that the courses actually continue on the virtual format for PE. We're waiting a little bit more information, and some modifications are going to obviously have to be made for students who are in person taking a PE class versus what we already have set up on our virtual model. But the county has decided to not have PE in person in the first rollout. I think that there are some safety and health concerns. There are some space concerns. And so the PE program will remain virtual. And the question around the mask wearing while students are doing physical activity, I think that that's also part of that consideration, to take a slower approach and to figure out the safety ramifications in terms of bringing PE back. The second question, and I'm just going in the order of questions, so they may kind of be a little bit, curriculum and then technical questions, but I want to make sure again that we answer them all. Will families be sent confirmation of which groups each child is, and according to what was submitted in the survey? We were never sent confirmation of what was recorded for that survey. Yes, we will be sending out confirmation to all of the students and families about where do we have them right now, if they're in the virtual or the in-person model. And also there will be additional communications around which grouping, if they're in the A rotation or B rotation. We are planning on sending those communications out sometime after the next board meeting, which is February 23rd. And also obviously after we get all of the technical pieces of which groups and all of that together. And so I would say that in all likelihood, we will begin sending the initial communication of we have you listed as in-person or virtual after next week, February 23rd board meeting. And then we will send additional communication around the rotations that your students will be in. Then there are questions around the attestation, temperature checks. And I want to say that MCPS, for this one, MCPS is developing an attestation for students and for staff. And there will be some health attestation form that students will have to fill out and families will have to fill out. We do not have that yet, but all of this in terms of the attestation will be part of an orientation that we do with families and with students. And we're waiting more information about how frequently students will have to attest and how that will be administered every day, or if it will be administered every day. The buses, great question. If they're arriving by bus significantly ahead of 9 o'clock start time, where will they hold? We're going to have several holding places. We're going to outfit the cafeteria. All of the tables that are down there are going away. We're going to put individual desks down there that will be socially distanced. We're going to do a similar thing in the commons area. And we're going to identify other large space areas within the school to continue to have students if they arrive significantly before the start of school with the buses. And as students get off, we'll have a system in which they are going to be assigned different spaces. Because we are reverting to our normal schedule, the normal high school schedule, we will also be shifting some of our support model that's now offered at the end of the day. So teacher schedules will shift to go back to that 7:45 start time from where that we had before COVID. And so we're planning to shift activities too for the morning. So there will be time for students to check in with their teachers. There'll be time for students to just situate themselves and get themselves ready. Obviously, there will be time for students to eat breakfast if they're coming ahead of time. And we're also looking at some other activities that we can offer during that time between 7 when they arrive by bus and 9 a.m. And so, but ultimately our schedules will shift to meet that challenge. I will say that we also have a number of families who are either providing own transportation, or our students will be walking, which is great, because if that is the case, we're really going to ask that students come in right before their first period class at 9 a.m., maybe 10 minutes before, 15 minutes before. They do not have to arrive as early as our buses will be arriving. So we'll again talk about options for students' arrival and making sure that we do have supervision and some activities planned for that significant time between when the buses drop them off and 9 a.m. Let's see, are arrival times by bus and car going to be staggered? Yes, by nature of what normally happens, there is a staggered approach for buses and students arriving to campus. And we, again, will need to kind of see how it's working to see what other protocols and measures we're going to have to put in place in terms of the arrival. What we can say is that we'll be opening up more entrances, so the entry point into the schools will not get congested, and that there will be multiple places where students can enter when they're either dropped off or when they're walking into school or when the buses are bringing them. There's a lot of question again around lunch. And where will students have lunch? Will students be able to have lunch with their friends, or will they be assigned to a location? So we are really looking at assignments for lunch, assignment of areas based on the number of students we have in the building that day, and supervised areas for students. Wooten has always had an open sort of, well, closed lunch, but open, that they are able to access all parts of the building. We're really rethinking that. We are hoping that all this wintry weather will end soon, and we'll also be able to take advantage of students going outside. That is our hope. We're going to be opening up our courtyards, outside spaces, as well as having some spaces inside of school in the cafeteria, the commons area, and again, some other larger areas that will accommodate our students, but also keep them distanced while they're taking off their masks and eating. There may be a few classrooms in play, but our thought now is to make sure that we are providing several supervised areas that are socially distanced for students to have lunch. I can't guarantee at this point that they will be able to necessarily have lunch with their friends. If we can accommodate that, of course we will. We want them to have lunch with their friends. But again, it'll still look very different because they will have to be socially distanced. They will be at their individual desks while they're eating lunch, or separated if they're outside, but we'll try to accommodate as much as we can. We just can't make any guarantees because we have to just sort of figure out how all this is going to look and work as we understand how many groupings of students will really be back and really having lunch with us. And again, as much as we can take advantage of outside, we'll do that as well. Let's see, you have articulated that class sizes will be limited to 12. Is that a Wooten specific decision or an MCPS-wide decision? It's an MCPS-wide decision and guidance that we have received around ratio of class size. They have also taken into account that our square footage at Wooten and how many we can safely accommodate in the majority of our classrooms. There are spaces that may be smaller or spaces that can be larger, but on average, Wooten can accommodate 12, maybe up to 15, but we're going for 12 students in a classroom. So it is an MCPS decision, but it's based on the square footage and the footprint that Wooten has as well. Okay, your students. Let's see, when students change classes, I believe it was mentioned that it would be done in shifts rather than whole school switching classes at the same time. I am assuming there is enough time in the 15 minutes between classes for this to be accomplished, or will that schedule be changed? Yes, there's going to continue to be time, 15 minutes or so, for students to release from class. And you have to remember that, you know, we have over 2,000 students, and we move, before COVID, we moved them all in a 5-minute time frame, and lo and behold, they were able to get there. So we think the 15 minutes in a staggered approach is more than enough time when we have less than half of our students in the building. That said, we know that our freshmen have never, ever, ever stepped foot in the building. So on the front end, we need to do a little bit more with orientation, and on the back end, we need to probably, where we will be giving them the first opportunity give them the first opportunity to move through the building, because they're going to need a little bit more time to navigate. All right, and I'm going to hold the questions in the chat because my brain doesn't always function both with the chat and then the questions I'm answering here, and then I promise we'll get to the chat before we move on to our next topic. How will dismissal work? Will it be staggered? Again, we are going to be staggering the dismissal for students as well, and making sure that there's plenty of time and space for students to exit the building safely. And, and we will have to make adjustments. We've never had to do this before. We know our numbers, we know where our students will potentially be. But again, as we work through it and it's actually in play, we may have to look at giving an additional 5 minutes or something else to make sure that we're able to avoid any bottlenecks, avoid any mass congregation of folks in the hallway. So we have a plan. We're going to implement the plan, and we're going to modify and adjust the plan as we see fit, and as we make sure that there is that we have that continuing to be in our mindset around maintaining that safety. Let's see. Question about participating in after school clubs inside the building. All after school clubs will remain virtual. We are not shifting to in person for any extracurriculars at this time. The exception to that, of course, is in our athletic program, and the athletic program is coming back. But any other extracurriculars will remain virtual, and partly because just opening school is a big piece, and then having to then layer on all the complexities of the school community. And so we want to be thoughtful first around making sure that we are able to start school in a successful way, and then we'll make sure that we're able to begin when we get the green light to bring extracurriculars back. And also it's a fairness piece. We typically have one or two sponsors, and then we have two audiences. We have an in-person audience and we have a virtual audience. And so we're going to rely on our virtual extracurricular program to accommodate all of our students. Now, having said that, we may be making some changes so that extracurriculars could possibly be offered at lunch, could possibly be offered before school, because again, our schedule is shifting. And so we want to be able to use some of those spaces and some of those times more effectively and efficiently. And we have been given permission to plan more activities during lunch and before school. When we were all virtual and we were unable to do too much at lunchtime, we could do some things, but not our entire program. And so we will be able to expand that. Let's see, what will the protocol, great questions around protocol. What will a protocol if an in-person student tests positive? So we're working, MCPS is working with the health department to put all of our protocols in place and to make sure that we are able to do contact tracing. Our approach is whatever is the safest and best transparent information. We want our whole community to have it, because that's how it keeps us all safe. And so we really do need to get more information from MCPS. And I know that guidance is coming for Montgomery County, for all of our schools, around our protocol for testing positive. I will say we have a protocol already in place when staff has been in the building this entire time of notifying, and we have, our charts in terms of who tests positive, what kind, or if someone lives with them, and the quarantine time, et cetera, I would imagine, and it's worked well for us at Wooten, knowing how to report, how to contact those that may have been impacted or been around a person who's tested positive, and being able to have those individuals quarantine. I am imagining that we're going to do something very similar, but it'll just be larger in scope in terms of providing that information that we need to move back to a quarantine because someone in the building has tested positive. On the same line, what will be the consequences, procedures for dealing with students failing to follow masking or other COVID protocols? Again, we have to follow the protocols. We need students to mask. We need students to be 6 feet apart. We all need to be doing that, staff as well. And so we will have update our code of student conduct, but I can tell you that we are going to engage with the student and say, this is what you must do. And if for whatever reason they're refusing to do that, then we'll have to have them revert to virtual. And we do have that for students to do. It is a non-negotiable that we need to have students wearing masks. They need to follow the protocols. And so we'll engage with the student. We'll try to problem solve with the student as best as we can. But if we're at an impasse, then we're going to have have the student go back to being virtual, because it is a public health crisis, and this is what we have to do to keep everyone safe in the environment. But we always try to come from a position of teaching and a position of really understanding first. But fortunately, we do have a virtual model. Maybe this is just too much right now, to be, wearing the mask and all of that. And if that's the situation, then we do have a virtual program that the student can go back to. We will certainly include our parents and our counselors involved in these conversations. But we really do need to move quickly, and we need to move efficiently in resolving the issue and deciding how we're going to handle those situations. Will there be COVID testing of Wooten students, and will it require parental consent? Again, this is one that's coming down the pike. We know that there will be testing. MCPS will offer testing. I don't know all of the specific details yet. I am imagining that when I get the information about the contact tracing and testing positive protocol, this will also be part of that. I am assuming that it's going to be part of parental consent, because of the age of all of our students. Let's see. There are a couple other big ones, but I wanted to get some of those first. So there are questions around music classes going to work for students inside the building. Again, we're still trying to get that guidance in terms of how that will actually work inside the building. There obviously, with masks being off and blowing, instruments and the wind, and air circulating, that is a big concern. And so we are still awaiting some guidance in terms of if we will be able for students to play their instruments in classes and how that would actually work. So stay tuned. That's another one that we're still figuring out. Okay, there is also questions. There was a question says, one of my questions involves how the teacher will be in the classroom. Will they have a mask which covers their face visually? My concern is communication through a mask is limiting. How are teachers preparing to teach for both in class and virtually? Trying to manage both groups might be difficult, or even managing technical issues while trying to keep the attention of in person. Are the teachers getting extra help? Thank you for this question. Yes, there are some tremendous challenges as we start to phase back. Have been looking and viewing this return, that again, we are going to be relying heavily on our virtual model. Our teachers, the way I see it and the way that we've been trying to imagine it initially, and I'll say initially, is that we'll have our teachers returning to school. They will be in their rooms. They will have the technology that they need. They have Chromebooks, they have the desktop. Our Octo, our technology office, has been working with all of the schools to equip the technology in the classrooms to match the teacher's needs. The Promethean connecting to the desktop, the Chromebook being able to offer the visual. And there's going to be some PD when teachers come back, and how to use all of this technology to make it work for two audiences. The virtual audience that they will have, the students that are on the virtual platform, and the students who are in their classrooms. The students in person will need to bring their Chromebooks or their personal devices every day. And there will be charging stations in the classrooms. And we are envisioning that initially that our teachers will plan and deliver virtually. Our students will be there in the classroom, and that is how teachers will interact both with students in the class and in their virtual classroom. Our teachers have been doing a phenomenal job with breakout sessions and small group and individual one-on-one. So there will be opportunities for the students who are in person to engage with the teacher. Maybe while they're doing a breakout session, the students will be doing that activity together in the class, socially distanced, of course. But there will be a split of attention between the students who are in the class and the students who are on the platform. We want to focus first on having our teachers just get acclimated to this and being able to, understand how the dual audience is going to work and become familiar with it. And then as we continue to, learn more about this model, then to perhaps to be able to move into more of a simultaneous model. But we're not there yet. We really need to have our students and our staff connected in their classrooms, being on the virtual model, and having some interactions within the class, but also having some interactions with the larger class through the virtual program. It sounds complex, and it is. And we, again, are going to be offering professional development to our teachers to understand how to navigate it. Our teachers have become more and more savvy as the year has gone on with how to utilize the technology tools. And so we first wanted teachers just to be, one, comfortable back in their classrooms, two, students being comfortable back in their classroom, and really rely heavily on our virtual program. And I would just say another reason we have to do this is because if there is a test positive and we need to quarantine and have students and staff remain home, we will continue to rely heavily on our virtual program. And so we've done a lot around developing a strong virtual program. So we think that as teachers move back, they're really teaching virtually. We have students in the class. There will be opportunities for students to interact both with the teacher and the student while they're in class. And then the teacher will also interact with the students who remain virtual. And we'll have to live through it and adjust it as we go along. We will have some classes, obviously, that we'll have to utilize classroom monitors for some of those experiences in person, because we have some teachers who have ADA requirements that will continue to telework. So we've requested some additional support in the form of classroom monitors. We have classes now that already have 2 teachers assigned to them. So we'll be utilizing those 2 teachers and being strategic in terms of being able to address the audience that's in person and the audience that's virtual. We don't have that for every class, obviously, and we're going to see where those areas are that we may need to have an additional person assigned to the class. That is not our first approach, because we really have the staff we have, quite frankly, and we want to use it to the best of our ability. And we're kind of
is it like,
we're already stretched thin, but we certainly, our goal is to figure out how we support the teacher in managing both the virtual and the in-person model using our virtual platform. I'm going to pause there to see what's in the chat and to see if there are any questions or clarifications before I move on to some other questions. Okay, I'm going to run through the chat. The last question I see is if the students need to bring their own laptops, Chromebooks, and chargers to school. Yes, we are going to require that students bring their laptop or a charger to school every day, and we are getting more power cords and power strips to accommodate that students will need to charge. And let's see, big supporter. Yes, I am a big supporter of our music program. Our music program is awesome, but I'm concerned marching band, which has so many students, is not among the sports or activities that are 100% coming back. Can you provide more update? And all right, marching band mom, yes. So that is a concern. I think the nature of how the instruments work, that we need to take a little bit more time to figure out how they're coming back in a safe way. It also is going to be weather dependent if we can, again, utilize outdoors in order to be able to do this. As you know, Ms. Eckerly is amazing and Ms. Herman is amazing, and they've already put in proposals for summer and how we could accommodate that. So we certainly will be exploring it. We are waiting on a little bit more guidance for the music department and what we're going to be doing, but I totally understand that question, and we're all anxious to see if we can get back as well. I haven't seen a recent survey email about return to school. When was it emailed, and how do I ensure my son is registered for in-person? Thank you. Again, we're going to send out confirmation of everyone's choices after the board meeting next week. But if you call the main office and inquire, we can certainly tell you what we have in terms of right now, what if your son is in person or virtual. And also, if you wanted to make a change to that, you could do that as well. Our main office number is 240-740-1500, and you just call and ask that question, and we'll be happy to give you that information. What is the earliest a Wooten ninth grader can have in-person class, and will a student's current schedule teacher change when they transition to in-person? The ninth graders, let me get the exact date for you. The ninth graders are in phase 2.1, and right now their return date is April 19th. The grades 8, 9, and 11. So our 9th and 11th graders will be phasing back to school on April 19th. I don't know if that date will be moved up. It really will depend on how well we're transitioning the first phases that are coming back prior to our 9th graders and 11th graders on April 19th. And so, but we will certainly communicate that. The other piece that's so important to us is we really want to try to keep our students and our teachers connected. And so that's the data that we're getting now. And that's what the piece of the puzzle we're putting together now, between our A and B rotations, between the number of students we have saying that they're coming back now. Will we be able to keep our students with their teachers? And for the most part, we will be able to do that. What may happen, there are a couple of scenarios that we may have to shift. One is that depending on the numbers of an in-person in a specific class, we may need to move a student either virtually or in person to that teacher in a different period, because that period may be oversubscribed, for example, for the in-person return. So if we have to make a shift, we would still try very hard to keep the shift with the same teacher, but perhaps in a different period. We really don't even want to do that, because we know that at this point, it's been such a crazy year, and just being settled in their schedule is important. So we'll only do that if we absolutely have to. You'll be notified of it. But we really want to keep our students and our teachers intact the way that their schedule is. But the other way that we could possibly we may have to assign a monitor, as I spoke before, around for teachers who have ADA accommodations and they're not able to return to the building. And again, we're looking at our PLCs in each department being able to absorb those students, or we will have classroom monitors to provide coverage for that. But those are the scenarios that we may have to change a schedule, but we really would like to keep our students connected to their current schedules. I'm going to go back down, I think. Yeah, so I know you mentioned PE will stay virtual. So when a student is in person and has PE, what will that person do? Again, we're working through, there will be a virtual, similar to the way that they are participating virtually. It's a little trickier, and I don't have the whole answer yet, quite frankly, because I know our PE teachers have done a phenomenal job of actually getting students up and moving and running and participating in PE, which is what we want them to do. So we're going to have to figure out, how do we translate that when students are in person, but they need to remain masked, and we need to remain that distance in a closed environment. And so we will be working with our PE team to figure out how to accommodate for that. Quite frankly, it's part of this big challenge that we're still trying to work through. Okay, what is the option for student if they choose not to return to school in person? Still continue on virtual learning? Absolutely, yes. So, I keep saying this, and I truly understand from my own family and my brothers and sisters having to make their choices about returning and not returning. I have, a sister who's my niece. She has returned her in person for 3 days a week. I have my brother and my two nephews and my niece. They have not. They're totally in person and will remain so. This is such a hard and challenging decision for all of our families, and we don't take it lightly. And I think whatever decision you make, quite frankly, is the right decision for you and your family and for your student. And we're going to trust that. And we know that there are two, that we have. As our students, both virtually and in person, and we're going to accommodate both the best we can. But virtual will continue. We have invested a lot of time and energy and effort in setting up our virtual platform. We've learned a lot. We know that we're even going to, excuse me, take aspects of it when we return in person, because there have been some really, really cool and really good things that have come out of it in terms of using a virtual approach for our students. And so our virtual program is alive, it's thriving, excuse me, and we'll continue to do so. So I want to make sure, our commitment to making sure our virtual environment is strong, it's robust, and we're thriving in whether students are returning in person or remaining virtual. Okay, let's see. I think that those are all of the questions, you're welcome, that I have in the chat. But before I turn to senior events, if there are any other questions, please feel free to unmic yourself and just ask the question. All right, let me get my notes again. So let's move on to our seniors and graduation. And for this one, I am encouraged that we are coming back to school. That needed to happen first for us to start, for MCPS, and for us to start thinking about what kinds of activities that we actually may be able to have to mark our seniors and their senior year. And so, of course, seniors are coming back first, one of the first groups to come back, I should say. And so the next set of questions is primarily around senior activities and what we're planning. What I still don't know is if we're going to have prom or picnic. There are a couple of big senior activities that I know that our students and our families very much want. We want for our students. It's the question of, with 525 seniors, how would we be able to pull that off successfully? And will MCPS allow for, what kinds of gatherings MCPS will allow for? And so as of right now, we do not know if we will be able to facilitate prom at all, or if how we were able to shift it to do something else that is prom-like but different, so that the students can get together. And I should say that I recognize that that's what they really want: a chance to get together, a chance to connect for their last year of high school. And so even though we've done other things, it just isn't satisfying. And so we want to be able to offer these events to our students. Again, with the signal of a return to school, that means that we can be creative and imaginative in terms of how and what we might be able to pull off for our seniors. We will be doing some, rah, 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 we love you, seniors. We have some yard signs coming. We have some other events planned for our seniors that are in the works. For example, like I said, the yard signs, I know that the seniors have a high interest in doing doing a sunrise get together in the parking lot. I believe that that's something we would be able to do because they'll be outside and socially distanced. So we're planning for that. The senior planners are also planning for t-shirts and having some sort of drive-by, pick up your t-shirts, and then at a later time having the sunrise event. And I may be coming to our senior parents perhaps to help us plan the yard signs and distributing those this semester. So yes, we have some plans for our seniors. We want to show them that we are so proud of them and we love them. We are still awaiting a little bit more information about how much we're going to be able to do. The other question is about graduation, and we are scheduled to graduate June 3rd at 2:30 at DAR. We are fully aware of the health crisis we are in and the possibility, the feasibility of that. So again, we have already started planning for a virtual ceremony because that's going to happen regardless, whether we're at DAR or at our school or another venue. We are planning for the virtual because we understand that not all of our families and students will feel comfortable in any other format that we also have. And simultaneously, we're planning for that plan B. We're not going to wait until a little later. We've already started planning for an outdoor venue and a graduation that is not at DAR, but could be on our field, could be at Gaithersburg High School. And the senior parents will be getting an email, as will the seniors, an email very soon in terms of preference for one of the two. If we are going to be at Gaithersburg High School or Wootton High School, we want to engage you and kind of share our pros and cons around each of those venues. Our graduation team, we met last week, and that committee is going out to see the Gaithersburg and compare it to the Wootton setup for graduation. And then we'll start engaging our seniors and engaging our parents regarding of those two options, which one is more likely if we are switching from DAR to an outdoor graduation. I think it's very important. We've learned a lot of lessons from last year to plan for the plan B to make it really phenomenal for our students. I think we did a really nice job and it was very well represented for the virtual graduation, but we have time to do more this year and we're certainly taking advantage of it. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm trying to, there is also a question around a parent group, a Facebook committee. I'm not sure if there is a parent Facebook committee for Wootton, and if that's something that's interested in, and I will ask Mr. Rabin in the PTSA if there is perhaps a specific committee. We did have, and we do have a list of senior parents who like to help with events. Obviously, we've been a little quiet about that because we're not sure which events that we're going to be able to pull off. But now that we're in the spring semester and we're getting a little bit more direction around some events that we can, or not events, but things that we can do for seniors, like the yard signs and helping seniors with their t-shirts and things of that nature. We will be engaging our parents more because we know that you want to help and we appreciate that. And we know that you want to be part of this because this is very difficult and different for our students. So we'll make sure that you're getting more information. Ms. Cocker will be sending out more regular communication regarding what we're doing and how parents can be involved to help and to participate. Let's see, I'm going to go to the chat because I think I answered. Okay. All right. Okay. I think that I have answered the questions so far around graduation, but again, I invite you to unmute at this point. And if there's a specific question or something else that you'd like me to take a stab at, I'm happy to do so.
While we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions, you just touched on asking, touching on the PTSA helping with graduation and seniors. I mean, traditionally in the past, we've supported things that go on maybe financially. We haven't generally been in charge of those things. But I think certainly there's room for us to help this year if there needs to be help. I think we just usually take our guide from the school, since the school obviously does most of the planning around graduation. We can't over plan over the school. So certainly if there are parents who want to come together and work with the PTSA, we would welcome that. But traditionally we haven't had like a specific committee dedicated to graduation. But we would, if you think that that's something we should do, we can certainly look into that.
Yeah, I think that the PTSA has been tremendous partners in providing what we really need is the financial, quite frankly, or the extra pieces, to make it special for our students. And I think it's worked very, very well. And so I think we're in good shape in terms of this, but certainly, if there is something specific, we can ask parents to help to volunteer. We always ask for senior parent volunteers for our breakfast that occurs in the fall. And they make the pancakes and bring the bagels and the donuts. And so if there are opportunities similar to that we can ask for support, we will certainly do so. I must say that some of this is also privacy. So when we think about the yard signs that we'll be giving out for our students, for example, we have to be very careful about releasing students' home addresses. So as faculty, we could do something like that, but we're very clear about confidentiality. So we don't necessarily have our parents participate in that aspect of whatever it is that we're doing. And so that is also part of the reason why, we've sort of had a division of labor, if you will, in the way that we have to be mindful of our responsibility to our students and our families and in those privacy areas as well. But again, as we know more and as we understand the specific needs and where we can make this even more special for our students, we'll certainly enlist and engage the PTSA, our senior parents. I know that you all are also ready to help us celebrate our seniors and provide, something positive and special for them, particularly when they've lost so much, quite frankly, and not being able to be together. So we're keeping that in mind. I know I keep saying the same thing of, we're still sort of waiting and seeing, and we're still trying to understand what those parameters are. But we certainly have been planning some special events for our students and for our seniors in particular, because we just want to celebrate them just as we know you do as well. Let's see, there is another question. The teachers that need to be at home because of ADA needs, when they get vaccinated, will they return, or are they waiting for further in the future when kids are vaccinated? That's a great question as well. It is very much an individual circumstance in terms of our teachers coming back if they are vaccinated, and it depends on the ADA circumstances. I have a teacher who was not able to return, but now that the teacher is vaccinated, will be able to return, but we'll have to limit some of the supervisory positions. So our teachers are working hard and wanting to return. And so we're using, all of the information we have. And that's why this is so challenging, right? Because the landscape continues to shift, and it will be better, when more folks are vaccinated, and that will certainly shift our teachers and who's able to come back and who's not able to come back. So and all of this, of course, is going through their medical providers, and then we're getting that information, and we're just accommodating as best as we can for all of these individual circumstances to make sure everyone is safe. Any other questions? All right. Well, if I don't hear any other questions, and I hope I answered all of the questions that came in the Q&A before, but just again, high level kind of where we're going next. Uh, we will have we will have information given to you sometime next week. You'll get an email blast regarding the choice that we have on file for your student, that it is either to return or to continue virtually. So all of that information will be provided sometime next week. We will then also we're also using our homerooms to do some orientation for our students and to answer questions about virtual and in person and provide them with information around what they can expect. For our 9th grade students, we'll be providing a virtual orientation, and we're planning a video virtual orientation for them as well, so that they can become a little bit more familiarized and acquainted with the building, and have a little bit of extra support as they start to transition back to the building. And we'll be giving more specific information around the schedules and what to expect for those families who have chosen for their students to come back in person, and to make sure that they really understand, what we're going to all be asking everyone to do as we return to the building, what it'll look like, and hopefully that they feel confident and safe in coming back into the building. And so, and we'll also have other town hall meetings to make sure that we're addressing all of the concerns. I guess I will leave with this. We've never done this before. We're planning as best as we can using CDC guideline, health department, of course, the guidance from MCPS, and our own thinking around what our vision is and what it is that we want to focus on as we open our school at Wootton. And that, of course, is the safety and health and welfare of all of our students and staff, and providing them with an experience to come and start to acclimate to the building. We also are adaptive. We know that what we plan in execution may need to change, and that's okay. And so we'll keep you abreast of all of that. We're going to do the very best we can. I love all the questions because it's like, oh yeah, we need to think about that too. So I always value and appreciate your input in all of this, because these are just very different times, and we need to understand how we need to meet them. And that's my guarantee and my assurance to you that we're going to continue to do that. And so with that, if there isn't anything else, I just want to say thank you so much for all that you're doing. I know this has been a heavy lift on your part as well, and looking forward to starting to see our staff and students return in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Ms. Bolden.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay warm.
Bye.
Bye-bye.